Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've dealt with severe endometriosis since I was 13 years old. For those who don't know what that is, it's a condition where tissue, similar to the lining of your uterus, grows outside of it. It's incredibly painful, and one of its lovely side effects is extreme bloating, which makes you look pregnant, like very pregnant. My parents were really supportive throughout my journey. I had already gone through one surgery by the time I was 16, but the bloating still persisted. Living in a small beach town in Florida didn't make things easier. You know the type. Lots of retirees, everyone knows everyone's business, and people love to share their unsolicited opinions. Being 5'6" and only 100 pounds made the bloating even more noticeable. Picture a walking stick with a beach ball attached to it. That was basically me. The bloating got so bad that regular pants wouldn't fit anymore, which is why I found myself at Walmart that day looking for maternity pants. The irony. I was browsing through the maternity section trying to find something that wouldn't make me look like I was wearing a tent, when this woman approached me. She was probably in her 50s, wearing one of those typical Florida retiree outfits, floral print top, khaki capris, and way too much jewelry for a trip to Walmart. Without any warning, she reached out and put her hand right on my stomach. Just like that, invading my personal space like she had every right to do so. She excitedly asked about my due date and commented on how amazing I looked for someone so young. I froze for a moment, staring at her hand on my stomach. Now, I've been asked about my pregnancy before, but this was the first time someone had actually touched me. Something in me just snapped, and I decided to teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. I put on my most innocent face and placed my hand over hers, which was still on my stomach. With the sweetest voice I could muster, I told her I wasn't sure about the due date since I was only 12 years old, and my mom handled all the pregnancy-related stuff. All the color drained from it so fast I thought she might faint right there in the maternity section. She jumped back like my stomach was subtly made of lava, taking 3 quick steps backward. She started stammering and stuttering, unable to form a complete sentence. She started mumbling something under her breath, looking around frantically as if searching for an escape route. A few other shoppers nearby had overheard our exchange and were now staring at her with looks of absolute horror and disgust. I decided to twist the knife a little further by innocently asking if something was wrong and whether I should go find my mommy. That was the final straw. She practically ran away, abandoning her shopping cart in the middle of the aisle. As she speed walked away, I could hear the whispers from other shoppers, and one older lady shouted after her, making sure everyone in the vicinity knew she should be ashamed of herself. One of the store employees, who had witnessed the whole thing, came up to me afterward. She sympathetically told me she had seen everything and mentioned that this woman was a regular troublemaker in the store. Then she kindly offered to help me find what I was looking for. I explained my actual situation to her, and she helped me find some comfortable pants while we both laughed about how that woman probably wouldn't be touching any more pregnant strangers' bellies in the future. From that day on, while I still get asked about my due date pretty regularly, no one has ever dared to touch my stomach again. I guess word travels fast in a small town, especially when it involves a pregnant 12-year-old at Walmart. I've been friends with these 2 amazing women for over 40 years now. We met back in college when we were all studying education, and we've been inseparable ever since. All 3 of us went on to become high school teachers, though we taught at different schools across the city. Now that we're retired, we make it a point to meet up every Wednesday for lunch at this lovely Italian restaurant downtown. Last week was special because we were celebrating my best friend's successful hip replacement surgery. She had been struggling with mobility for months, and this was her first outing since the procedure. We specifically chose this restaurant because they have these comfortable corner booths that make it easier for her to sit and stand without straining her hip. We arrived at the restaurant around 1 p.m. and I helped my friend settle into our usual corner booth while my other two friends went to freshen up in the bathroom. That's when this woman, in her mid-30s, stormed up to our table. She immediately demanded that we move, claiming that this was her table. When I asked her to clarify what she meant, she repeated herself, explaining that she comes every Wednesday and always sits at this specific table, insisting it was hers. I tried to explain politely that the restaurant doesn't reserve tables without prior arrangements and that we were already seated. She didn't care and became more aggressive, stating that she'd been coming there for 5 years and everyone knew it was her spot. She mentioned having an important business lunch in 10 minutes and insisted she needed this table. I attempted to reason with her, explaining that my friend had just had surgery and this booth was the most comfortable for her condition. She dismissed this completely, saying it wasn't her problem and telling us we could sit anywhere else, pointing out that there were plenty of regular tables available. When I stood my ground and mentioned that we were already settled and had our drink orders taken, she tried to intimidate me by asking if I knew who she was, claiming friendship with the owner and threatening to have us thrown out. That's when she started making a scene, waving her arms and raising her voice. Several other diners were starting to stare at us. Just then, my two friends returned from the bathroom. Now, what this woman didn't know was that my friends aren't just any retired teachers. One used to be the teachers' union president and had gone toe-to-toe with the toughest school board members for decades. The other one spent 30 years teaching debate and drama, and she could project her voice like nobody's business. When my first friend asked what the problem was, the woman complained that I, whom she referred to as this old lady, wouldn't give her her table. My second friend responded in her booming theater voice, sarcastically questioning when the establishment had started selling their furniture. After I explained the situation, my first friend addressed the entire restaurant, pointing out ironically that we'd been coming there every Wednesday for 8 years and had never seen the woman's name engraved anywhere on the booth. The woman then resorted to name-calling, labeling us as bitter old hags who didn't know our place. My drama teacher friend projected her voice even louder, mocking the woman's entitlement by offering her a free lesson in social behavior, reminding her that she'd spent 30 years teaching entitled princesses like her. My other friend pulled out her phone and challenged the woman's claimed friendship with the owner, revealing that her nephew actually owned the place. The woman accused us all of lying. By this point, the restaurant manager had come over to investigate the commotion. My friend explained the situation, asking him to clarify the restaurant's policy on table ownership. The manager, looking completely confused, confirmed that they don't reserve tables without arrangements and acknowledged us as regular customers. The woman's voice started cracking as she desperately insisted that she always sat there, repeating that it was her spot. My drama teacher friend continued the theatrical mockery, calling out as if to a director for a spotlight on what she called a breakthrough moment in adult tantrum throwing. The entire restaurant burst into laughter, and the woman's eyes welled up with tears. She threatened to call the police, to which my friend welcomed the idea, saying she'd love to explain how the woman was harassing someone who just had hip surgery over a table preference. That's when the woman completely lost it. She let out this high-pitched scream that would have made any drama student proud, grabbed her purse and ran toward the exit, nearly tripping over a waiter in the process. At the door, she turned around and made one final threat, saying we hadn't heard the last of her and that she would have us all arrested for elder abuse. My drama teacher friend couldn't resist one final jab, calling after her with stage directions for a more dramatic exit. The whole restaurant erupted in applause as she fled to her car. We later found out from the manager that she had indeed called the police, who showed up about 20 minutes later. After reviewing the security footage and taking statements from other diners, they ended up warning her about making false reports and causing public disturbances. The manager comped our meals that day, not because we asked, but because he said we'd provided the best entertainment his restaurant had seen in years. We still go there every Wednesday, and needless to say, we've never seen that woman again. Life hasn't been easy since my husband passed away 3 years ago. Between working 2 jobs to keep us afloat and trying to be both mom and dad to my daughter, I guess I missed the signs that something was wrong. My daughter used to be this sweet, responsible kid who got good grades and helped around the house. But after her father died, she started hanging out with this new friend from school. At first, I was happy she found someone to help her cope, but I started noticing changes. She became more withdrawn, started caring too much about designer brands, and was always comparing herself to these makeup influencers on social media. I tried my best to give her what she needed, but working as a waitress and doing administrative work on weekends only stretches so far. I couldn't afford the $50 lipsticks and $200 palettes she kept begging for. I thought I was teaching her the value of money and hard work, but apparently I was teaching her to resent our situation instead. Yesterday, my whole world came crashing down when I got a call from the police station. The officer told me they had my daughter in custody, explaining that she and another minor had been caught shoplifting at Sephora. I couldn't believe it at first, insisting there must be some mistake and that my daughter would never steal. The officer gently but firmly told me there was no mistake, explaining they had been caught on camera and had admitted to stealing approximately $600 worth of items. I felt like I couldn't breathe. When I arrived at the station, I saw my daughter and her friend sitting there, mascara streaking down their faces from crying. The other girl's father arrived shortly after me, looking just as shocked and devastated as I felt. The police officer told us that both girls had admitted this wasn't their first time stealing, and that Sephora would decide whether to press charges. He explained they had taken their fingerprints and mugshots but would be releasing them into our custody. The other girl's father expressed his shock and anger at the situation. My daughter tearfully apologized, saying they hadn't thought it would be such a big deal. Her friend chimed in, explaining through tears that they just wanted to have nice things like everyone else. I was furious and told them they could have gotten jobs or asked for allowances, anything but stealing. The police officer pulled me aside while the girls gathered their belongings. He explained that we would receive a letter from the district attorney's office and strongly recommended getting a criminal defense attorney who specializes in juvenile cases. He advised that the girls shouldn't discuss this with anyone and should avoid contact with each other. The next day, I started calling attorneys. The first consultation felt like a punch to the gut. The attorney explained that given their age and the non-violent nature of the crime, they likely wouldn't be tried as adults. However, he warned me that between his retainer, billable hours, restitution, and court fees, we were looking at $10,000 to $15,000. When I expressed my shock at the amount, telling him I barely made that in 6 months, he mentioned the possibility of payment plans while emphasizing that I needed representation. He tried to reassure me by explaining that if my daughter completed her penalties and paid restitution, she might be able to get her record sealed. That night, I sat my daughter down for a serious talk. I asked if she understood what she'd done and the sacrifices I would have to make to pay for this. She responded flippantly, saying she hadn't thought they'd get caught and that everyone at school did it. When I used the old "if everyone jumped off a bridge" argument and reminded her how hard I'd been working to give her a good life, she lashed out. She screamed that I didn't understand, that I never let her have anything nice, and that her dad would have understood. That hurt more than anything else she could have said. I took a deep breath before telling her that her father would have been heartbroken to see her in handcuffs. I explained that this wasn't about makeup or nice things, but about making choices that could ruin her entire future. I warned her that this was her one chance to get back on track, and if she got caught again, it would get much worse. 2 weeks later, we received a letter from the district attorney's office. Sephora decided to press charges, but they were willing to work with a juvenile diversion program. My daughter would need to complete 100 hours of community service, attend theft prevention classes, and pay restitution. The store manager even agreed to let her work at the store during weekends to pay back what she stole. My daughter's friend wasn't as lucky. Her father sent her to live with her mother in another state, and she is facing similar charges there for previous thefts we didn't know about. My daughter lost her friend, but maybe that's for the best. It's been 3 months since that day. Between the payment plans for the attorney and restitution, I've had to pick up a third job doing food delivery at night. My daughter has completed half of her community service hours, and her weekend job at Sephora has taught her more about the real value of things than I ever could. The store manager says she's one of their most honest employees now, always stopping potential shoplifters by sharing her own story with them. Sometimes I catch her looking at her father's picture before heading to work, and I know she's finally understanding what real responsibility means. Fresh out of college with an engineering degree, I was excited to start my career at a respected firm in Pittsburgh. The salary was great, but the housing market was brutal, so I decided to look for roommates to split the costs. That's how I ended up moving into this beautiful 3-story house with 2 other guys. My first roommate was pretty cool, a nurse who worked night shifts and kept to himself mostly, but the other one, oh boy. Let's call him the senior resident because that's literally how he introduced himself to me. When I first walked in, he made sure to tell me he'd lived there for 5 years and that he knew how things worked around there. He claimed it was his house and his rules. I thought he was joking at first. He wasn't. It was his house as much as it was mine. We all paid rent to the same landlord, but tried telling him that. One day he lectured me about the thermostat, declaring it must stay at 75 degrees with no exceptions, and not caring if anyone was sweating. When I pointed out that we all paid equal shares of the utilities and suggested a compromise, he just repeated that he'd been there for 5 years, emphasizing each word, and that meant he made the rules. It got worse from there. He'd inspect our rooms weekly for cleanliness, remove our food from the fridge if he decided we had too much, and even tried to set a curfew for when we could use the kitchen or living room. The nurse and I bonded over our shared misery. We started documenting everything, taking pictures of our food before leaving for work, installing locks on our bedroom doors, which sent him into a rage, and reporting everything to the landlord. Things came to a head last month. I was doing my laundry on a Tuesday at 7 p.m. when he confronted me. He demanded to know what I thought I was doing. When I simply replied that I was doing laundry, he angrily told me it was his laundry day. I tried explaining that he'd already done his laundry that morning and I'd checked our agreed-upon schedule, but he just screamed that he needed to do another load. He started pulling my wet clothes out of the washer and throwing them on the floor. When I tried to stop him, he shoved me. The nurse, who had just woken up for his shift, came downstairs and yelled at him to stop. The senior resident told him to stay out of it, claiming this was between him and the rule breaker. He charged at me with his fist raised. Thank God for my pepper spray keychain. One quick spray, and he went down screaming like I'd thrown acid on him. Through his tears and coughs, he threatened to call the police, claiming I had assaulted him. The police arrived within minutes. After hearing all 3 sides of the story and seeing our documentation of his behavior, they pulled him aside. The officer explained to him that he had attempted to physically assault his roommate and we had acted in self-defense. The officer made it clear that if anyone was getting arrested, it would be him, and asked if he'd like to press charges. He moved out the next day, leaving behind a forwarding address with the post office. Well, you know what? After everything he put us through, I don't feel motivated to help him get his mail. Time-sensitive stuff? Right back to the mailman it goes. Yesterday's toll bill from the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. Oops, must have accidentally fallen into the shredder while I was dealing with my own papers. The nurse and I found a new roommate, a teacher who actually understands the concept of sharing living space. The thermostat now stays at a reasonable 72 degrees. We all do our laundry whenever we need to, and nobody inspects anyone's rooms. Senior resident's attempt to assert his dominance not only got him pepper sprayed, but also landed him with a bunch of late fees from his missed mail. He tried to blame the post office for his missing toll bill, but they had proof of delivery to our address. His seniority didn't count for much when collections came calling. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.